What also gets me about this is it gives the Chinese Communist Party tremendous political leverage over the United States if all of our medical supply chain is so enmeshed with China.
Well, this happened during the pandemic.
Hmm.
You may have heard that China threatened to withhold antibiotics from the United States in the middle of a pandemic. And you need antibiotics because people who get COVID, they could also get other kinds of infections.
Why were they threatening that?
I think it was to simply show that we're in charge here.
Hmm.
It's shocking that there's a bill in Congress to support bringing back antibiotic manufacturing capability here in the U.S. I hope it passes, but I would be shocked.
Yeah, I know Biden has talked about having a 90-day investigation into the origin of the coronavirus. If China has this kind of leverage over our medical supply chain, I could see that going pretty badly if, the U.S. asks too many questions about the coronavirus origin.
That actually happened. With this heparin, this blood thinner I talked about, and this was told to me by someone very close to the situation in the federal government, that China said to the U.S., if you speak too badly about China on this, then you might have shortages. That was back in 2007 and 8.
Is that show?
That happened too during the pandemic because Josh Rogan for the Washington Post was talking about how essentially the Chinese government had threatened the Trump administration that if they still wanted to talk about the lab leak and stuff like that, that like there would be PPE shortages, like N95 masks.
Wow.
Yeah.
People might say, well, blame that particular administration. Well, this was going on 10 years before in a different administration.
Yeah. And it's gonna go on into the future unless this is changed. And so this brings us to the topic of China's vaccine diplomacy. This coronavirus, China definitely played a big part in it. Their cover up for the first 6 weeks while they were hoarding PPEs. But now the world needs vaccines. China's manufacturing these vaccines. It seems like they have found a new tool to really kind of hold the world over the flames.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I'm writing a piece on global supply chains on this subject. And I looked back at World War I and World War II. And back then, farmers, agricultural workers were enlisted into the U.S. military. So who's going to run the farms to grow food? And as you know, there were blockades. England blocked Germany, food blockade in World War I. Hundreds of thousands of Germans died. And Germans returned the favor to England in World War II. So the U.S. government got together and said, let's, remember Eleanor Roosevelt and Victory Gardens, grow food. And that was so we could, not only for us, but so we could export it to our allies. We don't have any of that kind of thinking now. We're not even protecting ourselves. It's stunning. One of the things I uncovered when working on China RX is we used to have penicillin plants and these giant antibiotic plants all over the country. There's a big report that came out of Oak Ridge National Laboratory. And there was a manual on how to repair them. Everybody knew where they were, from National Security, Homeland Security people. We were prepared. And now we got zero preparedness, and forget about diplomatic efforts, because we just can't make this stuff anymore. So it's not just the intellectual property and all of that, but we just can't make the products that we need for ourselves or to be able to help, friends and neighbors, which is a really great thing to do, which China is doing.
Yeah, like the Philippines is an American ally. They have a horrible coronavirus situation, and yet they rely on China for their vaccines. They're not getting nearly enough. I don't know how many they're getting from the U.S., if any.
I don't think they are because the Philippines bought the vaccines from China. They didn't buy any from the U.S.
Yeah. And so then this affects the South China Sea issue, which also in the end has huge security issues for the United States. So by having this medical control, China has it ripples out into so many consequences.
But at least we have vaccines that, like we have the capability to manufacture vaccines, unlike a
That's
country
true.
like Canada, which is now, like they can't vaccinate enough people because they don't
Mhm.
have the capability. So we have vaccines, but like we don't, from Rosemary, from what you're saying, we don't have a lot of these other vital drugs that are just like everyday drugs that you would need.
Penicillin?
Yeah. And that's incredible to me that we've let it get to that point.
It is. There's a couple people I've talked to who are volunteers on ambulance services in major cities in this country. I spoke to one person, and she said that we have a problem getting epinephrine, which you give to people when they're crashing. And so we just don't have it. Imagine that. And if you don't have it, you could die within minutes. And I said, so what do you do? And she said, well, we just drive faster to the hospital.
Oh, gosh. Hey, we do have plenty of Chinese-made fentanyl, though.
Isn't that it? Well, see, look at this.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So China has, in a reverse opium war, China has flooded the United States with illegal drugs. And they're sending us substandard legal products that we need to survive. Wouldn't it be great? Imagine if we could build drug manufacturing plants in these communities and give people real jobs to make things that we need that will help us.
I want my fentanyl made in America.
Yeah, it's shocking, and I don't know. There's something wrong with the decision making in this country.
Is there decision making?
Yeah, there's no strategic decision making, and I will say I looked back at, you mentioned earlier about the melamine and the dog food. Remember the dog food?
Yeah.
Killing thousands of dogs here. But what's so shocking is that the lack of regulatory environment over in China, that was known. But that did not stop US-based companies from outsourcing production of medicine components there. In fact, that's how the heparin thing got contaminated. It used to be, big American company used to get it here in the US in Wisconsin. Then they outsourced it to China. And there's that hanky-panky going on that resulted in deaths. And in the court case of the physician that I mentioned, internal emails from the US company refer to it as the cheap stuff. So we are paying a very high price for cheap. And it's not like an airplane crashing. It happens very quietly, one by one. And we need to organize people. We need, as someone said on Twitter, people can follow me on Twitter at Rosemary100. We need like a consumer advocacy movement around this. Good news is companies are stepping up and some good people are testing these products. But we need like a consumer reports type testing. For every blood pressure medicine that's sold, let's have it tested by 3-4 companies and put those results out for the American people, and the market would change overnight.